Thank you for coming today.
Oh.
It's always a pleasure to be here and share with you wonderful information about nutrition, health, and how to keep healthy, and if we're sick, how to get healthy again. There's so many different topics to know. It's such a complex field, and there's so much research being done all the time that, you know, there's always lots to learn. Today's topic is how are cancer and nutrition related? So this is an important topic because we actually have a lot of say over our health. We have a lot of control over our health. There are some things that, of course, factors that we don't control, but a great majority we do. And one of the things that influences our health tremendously is our choice of what we eat and the nutrition that we put into our bodies or don't put into our bodies as well. So first, let's look at the definition of cancer. And I've highlighted two things because we're going to see that they're pretty important in understanding how it works. Cancer is a disease caused by an uncontrolled division of abnormal cells in the body. So those are the two important factors: uncontrolled division and abnormal cells. Because our cells are constantly dividing, and that is the way our body works. It's natural, it's healthy. So there is division, and our body is constantly getting abnormal cells just with use. If I go jogging in the morning, you know, the pressure that is being put on my knees and my hips, all of that is causing abnormal cells, and that's also a very, very natural process. And what my body does is when it finds one of those abnormal cells, it gets rid of it. Or if the cell is about to reproduce itself, there's a number of checks, and if the cell recognizes that it's abnormal, it self-destructs, because it knows that if I'm abnormal, I don't want to create a copy of myself. So the body has a very, very natural way to protect itself and to keep itself healthy. So let's remember these two factors: uncontrolled division. There's controlled division, but this is uncontrolled division. And then there's abnormal cells. And we'll see how that is a problem in cancer. So every cell in our body has a predetermined rate of division based on its function. So for example, our nails and our hair, which grow very, very quickly, the cells that produce it reproduce very, very quickly because they're constantly being used. Also, for example, the cells in our eyes reproduce very quickly. Whereas other cells, the cells in our spine, the cells in our brain, and very specifically, mature differentiated neurons, so the neurons that have already determined what very, very specific use they have. Let's say that it's a neuron that functions in the mechanics of our body, and you're a pianist, and it's a neuron that works specifically with the motion of your hands when you're playing piano. That neuron, once it's created and specialized itself in that specific function, it's never going to reproduce. It's never going to change. It might die, in which case the body will get rid of it, but that cell will never divide. There will never be a copy. So there are cells that divide all the time very, very quickly, like our hair, the cells that produce our hair and our nails, and then there are cells that never divide once they've established their function in our body. So our cells are constantly being damaged, and that is just from regular use, and that's normal. So as we go about our daily functions, and we're eating, and we're working, and we're thinking, and we're driving our cars, we're constantly ruining cells from just the pressure of use, from toxicity in the atmosphere or in what we eat, from stress maybe, from exercise. Some cells will go bad, and then the body just cleans it out. So that is normal. So when that happens, cells are cleaned out of the system, and then new healthy cells are created to replace them. So if there is a cell that's abnormal, the body will never use it again. Either the cell will self-destruct, or the body will identify it as an abnormal cell and get rid of it. So what causes cancer? If our bodies have these systems in place to rejuvenate ourselves, to clean ourselves on a regular basis, why does cancer happen? Why aren't these abnormal cells cleaned out normally? Well, the answer is abuse. Let's say that we we're in a place that is very, very toxic, like a nuclear disaster site, and our body gets a little bit of toxicity, and we leave very, very quickly, and then we go about and we eat healthy food and we sleep a lot. Our body's going to slowly be able to get rid of all of the toxicity that we got at that moment. But if we are constantly in a site of nuclear disaster and our body is accumulating more and more and more toxicity, our body just doesn't have the time or the tools to clean itself fast enough. And then when there is an accumulation of abnormal cells and they begin to divide and start growing, that's what we call a tumor. And that's when we identify that a person has cancer. So when all of these abnormal cells have accumulated enough and are reproducing at a fast enough rate that you can feel it sometimes in the breast or in the neck or wherever. Obviously, if it's in the body, like in the liver or the colon or in the brain, you aren't going to feel it physically. And for that they need to do an MRI or some kind of scan to identify it. So, but if we abuse our bodies, and there's a lot of ways we do that, then the body will get cancer. Or a malfunction. It's not necessarily just abuse, but some people, for example, are born with some kind of immune disorder, and that's a malfunction of the body, where it doesn't clean out the body. And so that's why, in some cases, that's why a small child can get cancer. Because even though the toxicity that they're accumulating isn't so great, the body's never getting rid of it. So it's accumulating over time, over 3-4 years, enough that it starts to accumulate and become a tumor and start growing like a cancer or as a cancer. So abuse or malfunction. What causes the body to not be able to replace these abnormal cells with healthy cells? So the body really has two functions when it finds an abnormal cell. The first thing is to get rid of it. You don't want that cell reproducing itself, and you don't want that cell being part of the body. But the second thing is, when that cell is gone, the body has to take care of creating a new cell to take its place. So for example, if it's in our liver, the body's cleaning out dead cells in the liver and abnormal cells in the liver. If it didn't produce new liver cells, eventually our liver would just shrink and shrink and shrink until it was basically non-existent. So the body, on top of getting rid of these abnormal cells, also has to create new cells. And if a person is nutritionally deficient, they're not giving their body the protein, the carbohydrates, the vitamins and minerals that it needs to produce these cells, then the body just can't replace these abnormal cells. So what are the conditions in our body necessary for cancer? A person who has cancer, what are the conditions that their body is in that's weakened them, that's maybe caused malfunction or abuse, that allows them to have cancer? What are the conditions that differentiate a person with cancer and without cancer? There's 3 of them, and they're very important, so let's go through this carefully. A body that is overloaded with toxins gets cancer. So if you want to avoid cancer, you need to think, I have to avoid toxins. Now, toxins is a very complex thing. Basically, a toxin means anything that's not naturally in our bodies. Anything that doesn't naturally belong or pre-exist in our bodies. So we could say, well, a banana doesn't exist in our bodies. No, that's right. But the chemicals that make up a banana, the nutrients, the minerals, the phytochemicals, all of those things, if we break it up, are in our body. So our body is taking in a banana and breaking it apart, and all of the pieces of the banana our body can use. So the one component in food that our body doesn't absorb is fiber. But fiber also has a very, very important role in our digestive process. Fiber basically is rough material that cleans out our digestive system. So if I eat, let's take the same banana as an example. The banana has a lot of nutrients and phytochemicals and minerals and vitamins and a lot of fiber. And the fiber is just like those, we could imagine them as little strings of a structure that hold the banana together. Those fibers will not be absorbed by our body. They just go through our digestive system, and they kind of go around and they scratch the edges, and what they're doing is they're taking all of the stuff our body's getting rid of into our digestive system, is being trapped in this fiber and then taken out of the body. So when we go to the bathroom, a lot of what we're putting out is just fiber that was in the food that we ate. But among all of that fiber is a lot of toxicity, a lot of dead cells, a lot of waste material that our body is also getting rid of. So a body that is overloaded with toxins gets cancer. So anything that doesn't belong in our bodies is a toxin. And toxin, it sounds very harsh, very dangerous. We think of uranium and plutonium, but just plain toothpaste. If you're getting, the run-of-the-mill Colgate big brand toothpaste, that toothpaste has a lot of toxicity. Deodorants, perfumes, makeup, all of these things are toxicity. Even, radio waves. If we're watching television, the television is putting out a certain amount of rays, and our body is getting toxicity, at a very low rate, but toxicity anyway. Our mobile phone, pollution in the air when we're out driving or walking, in an area that's polluted. All of that is toxicity. So we have to try to understand toxicity and look around our everyday and think, what toxicity in my surrounding or of the things that I'm consuming is entering my body? And if it's a lot, then I need to be careful. If it's not a lot, then my body is going to, and I'm healthy, my body's going to naturally be able to get rid of it. So, but a body that is overloaded with toxicity is going to get cancer. Number 2, a body with a suppressed or compromised immune system cannot effectively clean out the accumulating cancer cells or the abnormal cells. So here it's a suppressed or compromised immune system. Now, what's the function of our immune system? Function of our immune system is basically to attack and kill and get rid of anything that doesn't belong in our body. So if it's just a toxin, which is dead, just a radioactive, electric beam or something that causes one of our own cells to die, then our body's not having to kill it, but it'll surround it and it'll take it to the bloodstream, and through the bloodstream it'll go to our digestive system and put it into the digestive system, and the fiber will grab it as it's going by, and get it out of our system. That is how our immune system is constantly cleaning us. But if it is something that is alive, for example, a virus or a bacteria, our body actually has to send the immune system white blood cells to go fight this bacteria. So it'll surround the bacteria, it will not let it get nutrition, then it will destroy the cell, and then the same thing, it has to put it into the blood system and get rid of it through the digestive tract. Or sometimes through our skin as well. So, you know, our immune system and our system of cleaning ourselves also uses our skin to get rid of toxins. So when we exercise really heavily and we're sweating and we smell a little funny, part of that is toxicity that is coming out and being cleaned from our system. So, but if a body has a suppressed or a compromised immune system, then it can't properly clean out the cancer cells and they start accumulating. I heard this interesting story just recently, because one of the questions that I've struggled with in understanding cancer is, there was a lady who came up to me and said, Andres, I've done everything right and I have cancer. And that to me was very, very difficult to hear. You know, because I try to live right. I exercise every day, I eat healthy, you know, I don't do things that are out of the ordinary, I try not to stress. So I feel that I'm living my life in a correct way to avoid cancer. But still, sometimes these people get cancer, and the question is why? Well, the interesting story is this lady lived in Switzerland. I've told you this story before. She lived in Switzerland, and you know, you think living in Switzerland is a fantastic thing, the nature, blah, blah, blah. Well, many years later, her friends called her and said, a lot of people in our town are coming up with cancer. And it's because there was an industry that was polluting the water we were drinking. So you spend a year in this city, it's possible that that's affected you. So if you can, go test yourself and get cancer. Another story I heard is this family moved to a new place. They had bought a house, the father had a new job, and you know, they were so happy with this house and they had huge plans. It was a two-story house with a basement, and they wanted to turn the basement into this family room with a game center, and you know, they were having kids. So the mother was spending a lot of time in the basement, you know, just working and decorating and getting the carpets redone and the walls painted and everything. And eventually she started getting really sick, and they didn't know why. So she went to the hospital, and the doctor was fortunately very knowledgeable and had experienced similar things with what she was going through and her symptoms, and he said, this is some kind of chemical thing. So what the symptoms she was having was that her immune system was failing. So she was getting all kinds of sicknesses, and when she went to the hospital, I think she had like bronchitis or pneumonia. It was a respiratory sickness. And so most people would look at that and think, well, the problem is your lungs, or you know, what you've been breathing. But he was able to realize that it wasn't just this pneumonia, it was that all of her immune system was failing. And so he did other tests, and he asked the family, is there a gas leak in your house? And the father pulled up the basement and found that there actually was a gas leak in the house. And so this woman had been working in the basement day in, day out, breathing in this gas, getting toxicity, and the reaction of her body was that it completely suppressed her immune system. So maybe the gas itself wasn't enough to kill her, but it suppressed and compromised her immune system so much that then other things could be really, really dangerous, like just a pneumonia. So when we have a suppressed immune system, and that's what I think about, you know, people who try to do everything right. There's so many conditions we can't control. This woman maybe was exercising every day, eating right, trying to not stress, and she didn't know that every day she was breathing in these toxic gases. So, number 3, a body that is nutrient deficient cannot replace these cancer cells with new healthy cells. So in the process of our bodies trying to avoid cancer, the last step is once we get rid of those bad cells, we have to create new cells to replace them. And if you are nutrient deficient, if your system does not have the right nutrition, then it's not going to be able to create these cells. And that's also is a problem that can lead to you having cancer. So how are these 3 conditions that we talked about related to food? Let's review them quickly. Number 1, system overloaded with toxicity. Number 2, a body with a suppressed immune system. And number 3, a body that is nutrient deficient. So this one is pretty obvious how it relates to food if we're nutrient deficient. But let's look at how the others 2 also. So number 1, a body that is overloaded with toxins gets cancer. Well, how is that related to food and nutrition? Number 1, if we are constantly eating processed food, then we are giving our bodies toxins. So if we're constantly eating things that aren't just food, things that have been processed, so if you're eating, for example, white bread that comes from the supermarket package that sits on the shelf for weeks, part of that is food. It's made with flour, it's made with sugar, it's made with things from nature. But part of it is not. It has a bunch of preservatives and chemicals and things used, 1, to make it smell good and be firm and feel just right, but 2, to make it last also, so that they can ship it from who knows where, and then it can sit on the shelf for a couple of weeks until you take it home and it doesn't get moldy. So if you are eating processed food, you are putting toxins into your body. Number 2, dairy, eggs, and meat from the mass production meat industry is also full of toxins. So eating meat is part of our natural diet. So we, if we eat fish, if we eat chicken, if we eat meat, cow's meat, it's healthy for our bodies. Our bodies need those proteins. But if this chicken, if this fish, if this meat has been mass produced, as our system is now mass producing it, these animals are full of toxicity. They're grown with antibiotics, they're given all kinds of chemicals, they're fed things that aren't natural to their diet. So not only are they full of toxicity, they're sick animals, and we're eating an animal that is very, very sick, is overweight, has all kinds of sicknesses going on, and then they kill it and we fry it and we eat it. So if you're eating dairy, eggs, and meat from this mass production meat industry, you are consuming a lot of toxicity. And then if you're eating excessive sugars or refined carbohydrates, flour, corn products, chips, all of those things, then you're not only taking in toxicity, but you're also feeding these abnormal cells. So once the abnormal cells start to reproduce, in order for them to be able to reproduce, they need energy. And their favorite energy is sugar. And that's why somebody who has cancer and they're going through treatments, they tell them, even though fruit is very healthy for us, you should avoid eating fruits for a while, because the sugar in the fruit is going to feed the cancer. And for a moment, we want to stop that. We want to, completely cut off anything that would feed the cancer so that we can treat it. So, but if you're eating excessive sugars and refined carbohydrates, and unfortunately, those refined sugars and carbohydrates are in everything. Every processed food that you buy in the supermarket is going to have it. Even if it says low fats, even if it says, 0 calories, that stuff is not good for us. So that's how our bodies are getting toxins from our nutrition. Number 2, a body with a suppressed or compromised immune system cannot effectively clean out these accumulating cancer cells. How is that related to nutrition? Well, if we're eating excessive sugars and refined carbohydrates, that causes inflammation in the body. And that's scientifically proven. It's been shown study after study that if you eat excessive sugars and refined carbohydrates, your body's getting a shock of too much energy, and what it does is it causes inflammation. Inflammation is just basically a process our body does automatically to work to fix something that's wrong. So if you break your wrist, that inflammation that happens is basically just a lot of extra cells, a lot of extra white blood cells and red blood cells accumulating, plus water and all kinds of other fluids, so that your body can fix your wrist. So the same thing happens all over our body. And sometimes you can see when somebody is very, very sick, they'll look a little bit bloated or inflated in the face, or maybe in the whole body. Well, that's inflammation, and it happens inside of our bodies too. So if we're eating excessive sugars or excessive carbohydrates, that's constantly causing inflammation to our body. Also, if we're consuming excessive dairy, that causes inflammation. So there's this theory about milk and dairy products. Some people say, well, milk is for baby calves, not for us. So I don't know who's right or wrong, and I don't believe in extremes. When milk is a wonderful source of calcium, so as our bodies are growing, I think that's a great source of calcium. But it has been shown that over time, our bodies lose the enzymes necessary to digest milk. So the older we get, the less we should consume dairy, because eventually when we can't digest it anymore, our body just sees it as a toxin, as something that shouldn't be there, and it tries to get rid of it. So consuming excessive dairy, and I should maybe put, as an adult, it can cause inflammation, and it burdens the immune system. So all inflammation is a burden on the immune system. If there is inflammation, sirens are going off in our body, and the immune system is being called to action. So another one, eating excessive processed foods, or foods sprayed with chemicals, or foods full of hormones and medication, like the meat that we were talking about, cause inflammation and compromise the immune system. So again, all foods that aren't pure, that are somehow filled with toxins or covered with toxins or processed and made so that they have toxins, all of that is compromising our immune system. And it's causing our body to have to work extra hard to keep it clean. And then the last one, eating too much food, or regularly eating food that is too rich. And how do I define food that's too rich? If it's high in sugar and fat, then it's really rich. I'm talking about chocolate cake. I'm talking about delicious cream mushroom sauce on top of your steak. I'm talking about chocolate mousse. I'm talking about strawberries and cream. Anything that is really high in sugar or fat, or sugar and fats. I'm a chef, and I've worked in restaurants, and I know the secrets restaurants use to make your food more delicious. Sugar and butter.
Butter, that's right.
Everything
So.
tastes so much better.
But unfortunately, over-consuming that, or just eating too much. If you are overeating even healthy things, if you know, when it's strawberry season, you sit down and you eat a bowl this big with strawberries so that your stomach is just hurting, that is bad for our system. And you're causing inflammation, you're burdening our immune system. So these are the ways through nutrition that we can affect point number 2 and cause our bodies to be more prone to cancer. And now let's look at point number 3, which is maybe the most obvious one. A body that is nutrient deficient cannot replace the cancer cells with healthy cells. So how does our body become nutrient deficient? Processed food has very little nutrition. So if you are eating a majority of processed foods, then you're getting little nutrition. Now, I'm not an extremist, and I think sometimes processed food is very yummy. You know, sometimes I'll get a craving for a cinnamon bun from Cinnabon. And I know that that is processed. I know that the dough has been made with preservatives so that they can ship it from here to there, and it's frozen, and then when it gets to the Cinnabon I'm at, it's baked, and then they wipe that delicious icing, which is full of chemicals, and I eat it. That has very little nutrition for me. Basically, the nutrition it has is sugar. It's giving my body glucose, which is energy. But our bodies very, very seldom lack glucose. So that's the last piece of nutrition that my body needs. My body does not need more sugar. That my body can get from almost anything it eats. But it's not giving my body the other things that it does need. Lots of minerals, lots of vitamins, phytochemicals, healthy fats, protein. Those are the things that our body really needs, and that we have to get from specific foods. Eating a very limited diet with little variation can also cause nutritional deficiency. I read an article that was talking about the average American diet and how poor it is. And I think it was saying that the average American who follows the average American diet eats 50 ingredients in a year's time. Now, if you make a salad, like the one we're going to have tonight, you know, with nuts, with olive oil, with vinegar, with carrots, with cabbage, with celery, with sesame seeds, with, you know, you could almost get 20 ingredients into your body in one meal. The average American diet, it's 50 ingredients in a year's time. They're getting no variation in their nutrition. So maybe they're drinking milk, their body's getting calcium, and some vitamins like vitamin C and D in milk. Maybe they're eating bread, and you know, they add certain ingredients to bread to fortify it. But you know, if they don't eat broccoli, if they're not eating tomatoes, if they're not eating kale and cabbage and quinoa, then there's a lot of nutrition they're missing out on. So if our diet is limited and has little variation, then our bodies could become nutrient deficient. And that could lead to our bodies accumulating cancer and not being able to properly get rid of it. So what is healthy eating? Is healthy eating really difficult? Is it a science that we need to spend days and days learning about to plan our meals so that we're really getting the nutrition that we need? The answer is no. Eating healthy is relatively simple. And there's a very simple formula that I read and learned about maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I just love. I love it, love it, love it. So I'm going to share it with you. What is healthy eating? Number 1, eat food. It's not so difficult. Don't eat a bunch of non-processed quasi-foods. In the supermarket, there's aisles and aisles and aisles and aisles of things that aren't necessarily food. it's interesting, in the supermarkets, the real food is on the outside. You go into a grocery store, at least my grocery store closest to my home, I walk in and the bakery is right on this side. And they, you know, bake the bread there. Some of that is real, natural, good stuff, especially if you get like a 5-grain German wheat bread. That's full of nutrition. It's real food. And then they have the vegetables, fruits and vegetables section. And then along the back they have the meat section, and then the milk and eggs. And then on this side it's all windows. So, but the real food is on the outsides. And then in the middle, what do they have? All the stuff that can sit on the shelf that doesn't need any kind of special refrigeration, that, you know, so it can just sit on an aisle day in, day out. So eat food. That's simple. But be careful, not things that they tell you are food and aren't really food. Number 2, mostly plants. So of the food that you eat, most of it should be plants. And there's a huge variety of plants, fruits and vegetables, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Also not very difficult. I'm not saying that you shouldn't eat meat, that you shouldn't drink this, that you shouldn't have a beer or wine. No, but mostly plants. Your diet should be 75% plants. And not too much. So in point number 2 of impacting our immune system negatively was overeating. I think in general, because we live in a society now where there is food in huge quantities available all the time, 24/7 you can get something taken to your house. Supermarkets are open from 7 to 11. You know, you can stop at a gas station and get tons of quasi-food. They usually have bananas by the cash register. But, you know, it's easy to eat too much. There's so much food available. And a very interesting fact is they did a study of the people who lived the longest on Earth. You know, there's this little village in Japan that has people. There's a village in Peru that has people, you know, who all of them live over 100 years old. And they thought, what is it? Is it the food they're eating? Is it, you know, the way they work? So they tried to figure out all of the factors. The only thing they found that they had in common was that they're people who, in their culture, and because of their lifestyle, don't eat so much food. So they're following this indication. Not too much. I asked the doctor once, how much food should I eat in a meal? And he said, make a cup with your hands, whatever you can hold there. That's about the size of your stomach. Eat that. So if I think, okay, my breakfast, I'm going to have oatmeal with some bananas and nuts. Can I fit it in there? Yeah, that's a healthy portion. For lunch, I'm going to have some fish and a little bit of rice and a little green salad. Can I fit it in there? Perfect. For dinner, I'm going to have some toast with cheese and on the side some avocado mixed with cabbage and carrots. Can I fit it in there? Perfect. So, you know, it's not a science, but it gives you a general idea of, okay, well, this is the natural size of my stomach, because our stomach does expand and contract. You know, if we fill it up and then it learns, okay, time to eat a lot, and so it expands, and then when we're not eating so much, it shrinks down. But the natural shape of our body, of our stomach, should be about the size of our cupped hands. So let's review these. Very simple. Eat food. Mostly greens, mostly plants, and not too much. That is eating healthy. Yes?
Just a question on, I eat a certain place and eggs over easy, and they're kind of bland tasting eggs, and I eat at another place and they're very tasty eggs. I don't think it's the way they cook them. I think it's the egg itself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Any comments about that, just in terms of the quality of the plant, the quality of the egg?
Absolutely. one of the first lectures that we did, I went through a list of how to choose healthy food, because there is a difference between an egg, and an apple and an apple. Like there is a difference between a burger and a burger. You know, you can find a good healthy quality burger, and you can find a very, very processed bad quality burger. So let's talk a little bit about quality. There's a huge difference, and that's why, you know, it's become very, very popular to seek organic, because the people who are growing things organically, you know, it costs a lot more to produce that food because it's a lot more labor intensive, but it's made in a way that's a lot more natural and healthy. So the end product, if you have a broccoli head that is produced conventionally and a broccoli head that is produced organically, the organic one has a lot more nutrition. And as a result, it's going to taste better. One of the things that I've experienced as a chef is if I am cooking with all organic ingredients, I do not have to add very much salt for the flavors to be present. Whereas if I'm cooking with non-organic ingredients, it all kind of tastes a little bland. And so to help the flavors pop out, I have to add more salt. And the consequence is, you know, eating a lot of salt isn't good. So if chefs all over the world using conventional produce are having to add a lot of salt to their food to make it palatable or delicious or whatever you want to call it, then we're getting too much salt, and that too is bad for our bodies. It increases our blood pressure, all kinds of things. So yes, absolutely, yeah.
I just wanted to say something about eggs in particular. I guess a few years ago, Mexico was having trouble with their egg supply, but they would not accept eggs from the U.S. because the Mexican communities were saying they didn't taste like anything. Because the eggs in the U.S. are so mass-produced, and the chickens are fed a very strange diet of food that's not, you know,
Natural to
them. And so the eggs end up not tasting like anything. So I just don't know, maybe the one cafe you go to uses organic eggs, and
I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And we should learn to trust our bodies, because, you know, that's why taste and smell and all of our senses are there to help us decipher and, you know, pick out what's best for us. So
In terms like free range and grass fed and wild fish as opposed to lake
absolutely,
raised fish.
absolutely,
All those things.
all of that is going to be so much better for your body. So these three indications that I just taught you come from this book. It's called In Defense of Food. It's by Michael Pollan. And I must say that this book transformed my understanding of food and nutrition. So, you know, I don't know how knowledgeable all of you are now on food and nutrition, but this book earlier in my life and in my seeking to understand food and nutrition, it transformed my understanding of food and nutrition. So if you want a really good read, not only is he a fantastic author, it's, you know, it's a great read, but it's chock full of wisdom. He's a journalist, and initially I don't remember what field he was in, but it wasn't the food industry. But then eventually he was assigned to do a study of the food industry and write some articles about that. And so he became just passionate about this subject. And his first book was called The Omnivore's Dilemma, and it deals with this mass-produced meat industry. But then he wrote this In Defense of Food. Actually, an interviewer asked him, he said, well, now that you know so much about food and how it's produced and, you know, the quality of food, what would you recommend to us to eat, you who know so much? And so his response to that question was sitting down and writing this book, In Defense of Food. And so he says, what should we eat? eat food, mostly greens, not too much. So I recommend it. So unfortunately, and this is going back to his question, the only way to really control what is going into our bodies when we eat is to prepare it yourself. You can go to a restaurant and you can, very kindly ask the waiter, do they use olive oil or do they use vegetable oil to fry these eggs? And he'll probably say, I'm not sure, let me go ask the kitchen. And he'll go ask the kitchen, he'll say, do you use olive oil or vegetable to fry the eggs? And the guy will probably say, we use butter. But tell them olive oil, because that's what they want to hear. And so the waiter comes out and he says, yes, they make it with olive oil. There's no way for us to know, unfortunately. Most restaurants, they're just a business. They're trying to make money. And how do they make money off of you? They make yummy food that you're going to like, so you come back and spend more money. So their interest is not like your mother and your grandmother, who should be the people who are cooking for you and who should be producing the best food. Because your mother and your grandmother, they love you and they want you to be healthy. Of course they want you to like their food, but that's not the only intent they have in their hearts. Whereas the restaurant, they could care less if you die of cancer or get a heart attack. They want your money. So unfortunately, the only way to really control what you're eating is to eat yourself. And eating out can be fun. My biggest benefit of eating out is I don't have to do the dishes. That makes it worthwhile for me. But I don't do it all that often because I know that I don't have control over what I'm eating.
Just a quick question on
Yes.
olive oil. I've heard that when olive oil is heated, it changes. Is that correct, or is that just
When it's
theory?
heated above a certain temperature. So yes, if olive oil, I think olive oil's burning temperature is like 220 degrees.
If you're going to make an omelet with olive oil, just keep the temperature low?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why olive oil isn't used in baking so much, because you're putting your oven at 350, and so you don't want, because olive oil or any product, once it burns, then it's cancer causing or toxic to our bodies. So we shouldn't, barbecue is delicious. There's a ton of delicious flavors created, but that black strip is actually bad for you. So the caramelized stuff, the brown stuff just on the outside of that black strip is super delicious. It's full of aromas and flavors that are great. But the black strip itself, that's actually been sitting on the barbecue grill, that's toxic. And so we shouldn't eat too much of it. A barbecue every now and then is great, but not every Saturday, because that's abuse. So try to, have control of what you're eating. Prepare a lot of things at home. And then finally, this is our website, Cancer Prevention and Recovery. If you go to the events, then there's current event and past events. At the past events, you can see all of our previous lectures. If you missed one of them, the last two, for example, were on metabolism, a very, very interesting subject. This lecture from today will be on our website, hopefully in a week's time. And so we're trying to create a good reference for people to be able to see about all kinds of topics. All right, that's the lecture for today.